Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's September 27th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and really this is just a range day. We traded down into this and then went into this real tight range. This is about it's about 44.27 to 44, maybe 44. So maybe 15 points or so there, I think is what that is. But anyway, not much movement today, and it's small, and you can clearly see the EMA looks like a roller coaster straight across the page. That's a sure sign that you got a range. Honestly, when we turned down here, I really thought we may try to take another leg down like this one, a measured leg. But we've got strong support right around here, around this 427, 428 range, maybe you might call it 425 to 427. You can see we had a little bit of support there on Friday as well. So we've bounced there quite a few times. They're really struggling to take it any lower than that. But this is just a range day, so that's how I see it. But let's zoom in here a little bit, talk about the trades. You can see the big picture there. You had to be really patient today because there just wasn't much happening. Notice that there's a channel coming down. We had a break, and we finally had to move to a new low. And then look, we were going to bounce out of there. This is a really weak correction. It's still a correction. So trade it as long as you got something to trade there, but be very wary of it until it proves it's going to go higher. But you can see once we kind of got back up here to this, really the first target would be the close from yesterday or from Friday, which is here. And that's where we got to, and we turned straight down from there. So that's why I really thought we would probably, when we started lower, if we got through here, we'd probably made a measured leg down, but we just couldn't get through there. So it was really strong support. But let's zoom in here and let's talk about what we saw early on. 7 o'clock came right in here. It's a shame that we missed this little second entry here. It's a little bit congestive, but you could almost trade that as congestion with plenty of room to get out before this lows here. It's such a low risk bar. I think that's what, 5 ticks, yeah. So still very low risk. So it would have been a great trade if you were sitting here and you took that trade, especially when it tried to go higher once, twice, 3 times right at the key entry point. With such a low risk, I like that trade. But it's a little bit before 7, so I didn't mark it. Had a second entry here that would have been a nice entry, but no good. The signal bar is terrible. Actually, the second entry was right here. Again, no entry. I would have looked at this. Well, technically, that's a new low, so really I'll call it in the right spot. But it really looks like 2 legs back almost there. But technically, the second entry is right here. And it's not bullish enough, so... I'm sorry, not bearish enough. It's too bullish. And we drop down, and we're just trying to work sideways here. Don't enter in this stuff because you'll just get chopped up. It does look like a failed second entry short, and it works like one, but you don't enter a failed second entry on the low side long into the EMA. You want this to be above the EMA, like right here. Now, there was a second entry here, but you can see how congested it was, and it went just high enough. I think it makes a new high there, does it? I thought it did. That actually makes a double top and then turns down. So you got this little correction. You get a break. We try to move to a new high, and then it turns down again. So it doesn't. I thought it made a new high, but it doesn't. It just makes a double top. But this was almost a perfect reversal here. Notice the new high, and you try to go higher once, then twice, and right off the key entry, the EMA right there, which is a minor key entry point. If this would have broke higher, or either one of these, that would have been a perfect setup. It still looks like a failure, so if you took that, I wouldn't probably fault you, but it didn't break higher, so on this chart, it's not a failure, and I didn't mark it as one. So it runs on down. And we do make a new low, and then we bounce out of there. This is a higher low, but I think we've moved a little too far to really trade that as a higher low. So you do end up getting two legs up, and then you're just chopping sideways again, and you just don't get a lot of opportunity here. You might have taken that short right there, but it's just a first entry. You might have looked, if you saw this as congestion, which it is. So that is congestion. And if you saw that as congestion with that big bearish bar with room back to the end, you might have taken that trade. I didn't mark it, but if you took that trade, I wouldn't necessarily fault you. And there is some resistance across there too. It turns out that's kind of the midline of the day, but at that point, there was some resistance across there. So if you took that one, if you saw it like that and you took it, that's fine. And then we bounced down here. That's the third bounce. Notice, actually, we had a triple bounce here, but it's in that congestion. You don't want to go long there. Would have worked, but you don't know that ahead of time. But when it comes back again after breaking out, I like going long there because you can definitely look at that as a triple test. It does confirm that key entry point. I like going long there. There's a higher low right here. Signal bar is questionable, maybe, but it didn't break higher until you had an inside bar, and I don't think you could have got in that even if you'd have tried. It pulls back here and gives you a second entry, but again, the signal bar is no good. But there is a new swing low, and you get a first entry, second entry that fails, and we've been holding above that key entry point for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars now. I like going long right there just to try to get a scalp. You may not get any more than that. It does come back, and then it breaks lower there and gives you a second entry long when it turns up. That's probably going to trap some people, even though there's a chance there, there's some resistance right there, but it's not really that critical yet. Once we made this and it failed and came back and then held again, then it's becoming more critical. I'm not crazy about this trade. It's a little aggressive, but there is a second entry. Prices have been kind of getting stronger here. So there's some reasons to consider that. But notice what happens. It pushes up, tries to go higher once, then twice and fails, gives you that big bearish bar. The odds are we're at least coming back to this trend line. And we may be going, if this is a range, we may be going much lower. So I like that trade. Because it is into the EMA, it's a little bit aggressive, but it's such a bearish bar, and it is 3 times trying to go higher. Probably worth trying to enter there. Then, of course, we run down. Notice you get a first entry and a second entry. So actually, the second entry is here, but it never breaks lower. So you could treat it like a failure right there, but I don't think that's a very smart play. It doesn't really look like a failure. It's above the EMA. It's just not a good setup. So then we come back to the key entry point again, but again, no setup on my chart. And finally, you get a first entry, second entry right off the key entry point, and it actually breaks higher and turns down. It does look a little congestive, but that many touches off that key entry point with this engulfing bar. If you waited till this bar to close, you may not have taken that trade because it does look congestive and you got a lot of stem there. But when it broke higher and turned down right off that, I liked going short there because I really thought it would drop on down. It does drop on down, but it takes it a few minutes. If you're going to enter in congestion, that's the way you want to do it, with the trend off the key entry point. And you got the EMA and the trend line right there. And you would expect prices are probably coming back down here, and we might even be starting a measured leg down like this first leg that came down over here. So that's what you want to be thinking there. But then suddenly we get an overshoot, and then we come back right here. I want to talk about this too. There is actually a first entry and then a second entry here, but look how congested that is, and that is right into that same support again. You can see that there, and it fails instantly and bounces. You don't want to go long there, but you can't go short right there because of this overshoot and the congestion, both. Somebody asked me about this trade. Why did it fail? Well, it's a short trap into support, and it just failed into support. It bounces, and then it turns back down, and rockets right back down. notice this big move up here. It's just a first entry though. Um, and you really don't really get a close outside of that either. So, but it rockets down, pulls back. I like going short there as long as you got room to get out before here. So you may let it break lower and drop a limit order a tick or so back just to see if you can get a little better entry, but it doesn't matter. And you may not have gotten a, even if you use a stop there, I'm probably okay with it because this is probably going to trap some traders. And it drops on down. You just don't want to go short right into that support. Be careful of that. And even then, this is getting really close. So, I mean, you could almost argue for that to be green, and you probably could argue for it to be green. We drop on down. We bounce down here at the overnight lows. That's obviously that's what they were trying to test again, and when it held again, we're going to the other side. But notice that it makes that low, then it makes a higher low. So we've had this channel coming down. We got an overshoot, a break, a move to a new low, and now a higher low. And this actually breaks lower and turns up. If you wait till here to enter, one tick above that, it's a really big bar. Well, it's not that big. It's 11 ticks, but it's a little bigger than what we'd like. So, and really it's dangerous to enter on a engulfing bar. So just make sure if you enter here, you got room to get out before the EMA. Because see how it found resistance? Even though it pushed on higher, it may not have. It could have turned back down. And that's what we're afraid of right there. So maybe you let it break higher, drop a limit order or a tick or so back just to give yourself room. And then you're already out of your scalp. And if it goes higher, then you got a runner. You might have looked at this as a failure, but really this looks like a double bottom. So the failure really looks like it comes when we break higher. Right here, and you can clearly see that looks like two legs up now, so it looks like a failure, but it doesn't break higher till here, and that's actually a higher low, and off of this high coming back here. So I like entering there, but if you entered here, I probably wouldn't fault you for it. You probably could argue for that to be green, because notice the low, first entry, second entry, but that just looks like congestion with one leg to me, and you can see that's what it was because there's your second leg, and then it fails and goes higher. We run right back up here to the top, we find resistance, we make a lower high, we try to go higher again, it fails. Look at that bar, go short right there. There is a little support right there, but at that point we're making lower highs and lower lows. You can see that. That's what it would have looked like on the hard right hand side. So it doesn't, you got some support here, but they're still making lower lows and lower highs. Once it bounced there again, don't enter anymore, and you can see it quickly fails and runs up. But then you get a great chance to enter up on a failure up here with a nice bearish bar on a second entry short, and that's the better trade. Unfortunately, it still finds support here before it goes lower, but this big bearish bar right here off the key entry point, you could basically call this a double top and a lower high, or even a triple top. But it's right off that key entry point. It pushed lower and pulled back outside the range there. There is a little bit of support there, but we're coming off the highs, and they're just trying to beat through the buying until it goes back down again. That's what happens on range days. You go from the support to resistance to support to resistance. So you're looking for prices to go down. That's a little aggressive. I marked it green, and then that takes us into 2 o'clock. There is another second entry short right here, but that late in the day with congestion, and you're outside that trend line already without making an equal leg or something, and not quite back to the EMA. I don't recommend that trade. If you took it, you got burned just before it went lower. So you actually might take that trade, because now you try to go higher once, twice, and it's failed. And you get the congestion. It's like a little failed breakout. It's so late in the day that with all that congestion, I wouldn't take any of those. I just think it's too risky there. But yeah, that's what I saw today. Not a lot of opportunity. it kind of picked up a little bit. You just had to play this as a range and play the trends up and down in the range, and you can clearly see we had a trend up, trend down, trend up, and we're working on a trend down now. So that's pretty typical range, and that's how you had to play it really. But of course, it's big enough that you could play the trends within the range too. So anyway, there's not much else we can say about today. It's just kind of a sideways day. It was a real slow start. The trend was down, but we weren't getting a lot of setups. So it is what it is. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back to do it again tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow will be a little better day than it was today. But there's still trades to be had here today. But you had to be super disciplined and just kind of sit there and wait. And these days are hard to trade to some degree because at least we did bounce at consistent places and turn down at consistent places. That makes it easier. So by the time we got here in the afternoon, there was some trades up here that you may take. And of course, when we bounced here again, I like taking, and of course, the trends, you can trade those too. Unfortunately, we didn't get much opportunity on this one coming down. You got one real pretty decent trade there, but it looks a little congested. But hopefully you understand why. I mean, that's the key to congestion. If you can really read the chart and understand why it's forming, then sometimes it's worth taking. Still no guarantees, but most of the time it's hard to tell why the congestion's forming, especially if there's what it is. You've got this midline here of the channel, and it was given a little support. However, the trend is down. We're still reacting to the trend line and the EMA, so eventually it's probably going to break through there and go lower. So do you want to risk that that's where it's happening on the second entry, which is the most likely place right off the key entry point? So that's what you kind of have to weigh out in your head when you're trading congestion. But I just think until you're a really skilled chart reader, just don't trade congestion and you'll save yourself a lot of losses. Because most of the emails I get are the posts I see on the forum where it asks, why did this second entry fail? That's why, because it's in congestion. The context is all wrong. It's not with the trend, it's counter trend, but most of the time it's congestion. It'll get you more than anything. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.